Okay, everybody, let's call this meeting to order. It's Monday, October 7th at 12 p.m. We've got a couple things of business here before we get into the discussion on the commercial development. And I just want to comment that there is no public comment during this meeting. It's just an opportunity for the council to talk about it and figure out what direction we want. So first on the agenda is approval of hiring for Public Works.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a motion, after conducting interviews, I'd like to propose that we offer a job to Riley Jordan for heavy equipment and sewer operator position, pending a final background check and a drug test. We'll start him at step 3 with additional step upon completion of a 6-month probationary period. Anybody want to second that?
Sure, I second it.
Okay.
Okay, and a little explanation is we had a personnel meeting and we interviewed these two guys this week and they're both fabulous people. So, all in favor of the hire?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And also, following the interview process, I want to make a motion to offer Travis Johnson a job, also as a heavy equipment sewer operator, pending a final background check and a drug test at a step 4. However, he will not get another step after the 6-month probationary period of time.
Is there a reason why?
Because they're starting him at a higher step than Riley,
Offer
but
them a
after
step
the
3.
probationary period, then Riley will get a step up, but Travis will not.
But this is based on I'll second the motion. Sorry. I asked him a question before there's a second.
Okay.
Now you can ask a question.
This is based on the 2024 schedule, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That answers my question.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All in favor.
And then we also interviewed some people for Parks and Rec, but I'm going to turn that over to you, TJ. And
Yeah, we interviewed for the program and facilities coordinator. We narrowed it down to 2 possible candidates. It was a pretty tough decision. Within those conversations in the personnel committee, we thought an administrative assistant / community center would be a better position, what we're trying to fill. So we did change that from the program facilities coordinator to the administrative assistant. It's pretty similar. It just dropped off some programming duties. But yeah, we would like to we did extend out an offer to Jamie Stoltenberg at step 2. She came back and requested step 3 of the AFSCME salary schedule, which step 2 was $20.98 and step 3 is $21.61. So we're just looking I would make a recommendation to approve to hire Jamie at step 3 of the salary schedule at $21.61, which would include a 6-month probationary period.
I'll second that motion.
You got a first at first.
Can't TJ, yeah.
He can't make a motion.
My recommendation.
Well, I move that we approve that.
I'll second that motion.
Hire her at step 3. Any other
Yeah,
discussion?
there was no mention of a step after 6 months. Are we not doing that for the administrative assistant?
I think we were going to just evaluate her after that 6 months.
Go through the 6 month and come back with an additional recommendation at the time.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All in favor.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Lots of exciting new hires in the city. We should all be excited.
So now we want to jump into the commercial development, but we kind of want to wait for our attorney to get on.
How
Huh?
about the Starry Stonewart?
Number 4.
Oh, okay. I don't know who's here to talk to this. Anybody? We got Starry Stonewart. Patrick? Okay.
Yeah, what they want to do is they want to bring it down to where the leaf dump is. And what I propose is putting it on Randy's property where the public isn't, we don't allow the public back there, and we'll have a hole that they can put it all in. So they can scoop it out, haul it down there, and it'll be safe back there then. Nobody can track it out, can't go anywhere.
Who's scooping?
Mr. Forney, I think, was in charge of all that, so I have no-
Wapoa's kind of taking the lead on it, right?
What's that?
Wapoa?
Yeah,
Yeah. Why don't they just burn it?
Yeah.
either way, you're gonna have to get it away from there so we can put it back there and we can deal with it. It'll be
Wanna
just
store it
fine
for a
back
year
there.
so it dies and then, I don't, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I don't see it, as long as you got space for it, I don't see it.
Yeah, like I say, back on Randy's property where we don't allow the public back, there'd be a perfect spot and there's a hole back there to put it in and it'll cure the problem.
It can't in any way have water escape and get down in there, because I know they're bagging it, and they're talking about the bags will be about 40 pounds or so, each one.
No, it'll be fine right back in that corner of
I
Randy's
think it's under the
property.
direction of DNR and Wapoa,
Under DNR's direction.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, make sure they do, because I don't think we want to accept any responsibility for that other than burying it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I think you should probably do an incident report on that, that's what's occurred with it and where it's at. So all of a sudden, one day, it doesn't get dug up and everybody's wondering.
okay.
I think their
Good.
intent is to burn it, I believe, but, yeah.
Yeah, they can burn it back there if they wanna burn it, that's
I
fine
thought they were
too.
gonna burn it in the spring.
Lori just talked to me a split second on it this morning, so,
So is that DNR burning it, or?
oh, we can burn it too.
Don't you have to
I
have a
think the
permit to
intention
burn?
was to have the DNR burn it.
Yes, DNR.
Okay,
Maybe we should get clarification, but that's what I thought I read.
yeah, we can get clarification on that, but,
They had a nice little write-up that I saw this morning, came in from Wapoa for Mr. Coffey.
So do you need a motion to
Gonna say.
approve that?
I'll make a motion to allow the DNR and Wapoa to dump the Starry Stonework down at the joint maintenance facility.
I'll second that.
And under their direction, dispose of it in the spring, however they want, but put it in their court, so it's up to them.
yeah.
So you want that to the motion too, that the
Well, I
DNR is
don't-
going to be responsible for disposal?
I would think that we would be assuming responsibility without it in there, wouldn't we?
That's fine.
Go ahead. No, I just assumed that was part of it.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, are we still waiting for the attorney?
Now we gotta wait for
Well,
Mr.
before he
Jones.
shows up, I just need to address something, some comments that were made at the last council meeting. There were some thinly veiled accusations directed towards P and Z and the director that essentially money talks regarding the approval of permits and variances, which is not only insulting, but it's completely false and honestly ridiculous. I 100% vouch for the integrity and honesty of our Planning and Zoning Committee and staff, and I just couldn't let those implications go unaddressed because it was just completely uncalled for. And I stand by our entire city staff, and I trust that the rest of the council does as well. And I just want to urge that conduct and comments during council meetings remain civil and respectful. So it was inappropriate. So, sorry, Paul, that you had to hear that, so.
Do you have copies of what you're gonna talk about?
Yes, so I can pass those out while we wait, because
Are we waiting for Joe? Is
Joe's
that-
going to be on at about 12:15, so
Okay.
let me
Do
pass.
you have some materials for us, Paul?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think you'll get an argument on that. Wow.
Here, just hand it all passed down. How's that?
Okay.
Make it a lot simpler.
Yeah.
These are,
How are these different?
these are plats
Oh.
for the 3 commercial developments that were brought up.
Okay.
A couple of things by country.
Okay.
This is like, was this?
How come we have so many copies?
Oh, no, no, no. This is mine.
Oh, those are all of yours? Yeah. Okay,
Those are all yours.
okay.
Well, no, but you have to some extent.
Did you hear that too?
Well, no.
You blocked that up.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay. Aren't I wearing it? What?
Who is this one? Who's the most recent one? I say, who is that? Who this one is, Steve?
On the screen. Oh, there. So you're aware?
Okay.
I don't.
I think this is Jeff's. I think.
All right, I am going to stand up here.
Make a copy of or what is this one?
I'll explain that one.
Oh, okay. Do you have the copy email? Did you bring that? No, I didn't.
The one from Joe?
Yeah.
I know, I've got it on my phone.
I say, I wonder if we should have that printed out in front of us. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah, I
important.
think that's a good idea.
I don't
got it on
have
my
mine. If you could forward it to maybe Shar. Hey Shar, Sandy's gonna forward you that email.
To print out.
Lori sent an email out. All the questions you asked of Joe.
Oh, that's cute. Is that the new one?
I know, it's cute. I guess he's vomiting all the time, so he's not so cute right now, but, okay.
I think it would be important to have, so Sandy's gonna forward it to you.
Paul, are you going to explain these things? Walk
Yeah,
through 'em?
I'll explain them. And I'll do a quick recap. We'll take a look at each individual commercial development. Wait till everyone gets back.
These are the, I think these are the standards of what Nisswa have.
What was the reason for doing this step? No step and step.
Because the second guy, Riley or Travis, wanted more money immediately and was willing to forego a step after 6 months, and the first guy didn't care, so. So they're gonna wind up at the same point. They're both gonna wind up on step 4.
Yeah, I'd say one's gonna get shortchanged right out of the gate.
I know, but he was so good that they were willing. Yeah. And I wasn't part of that negotiation, so. Well, I'm just saying. Yeah.
Is he on yet, TJ? No.
Send him a link just so.
Did you get a little fishing in this weekend, Dave?
No, it was windy, too windy.
Great. Should we get rolling?
Yep.
All right, I'll do a quick recap of why this is in front of you guys today. Then we can take a look at each individual commercial development, how the moratorium and the amendments that were approved affect these developments. And then we can talk through how the city wants to handle each individual one. So just a little bit of a recap. Last Monday, I presented what the Planning Commission has been working on for the last 6 months as far as the land use amendments moving forward based on the task that we were given to work through the moratorium. And what that looked like was to continue to administer to not allow accessory structures as a principal use. So if you come to our desk tomorrow, you need to have a principal use in order to have an accessory structure. But then also no personal storage in the limited commercial and light industrial zones, because it is not a permitted use in our current existing land use ordinance, because under commercial use and light industrial commercial use, it states that a business needs to be established and that it needs to be rented and or for sale if it's going to be storage. So with that being said, that was presented and the conversation quickly shifted into what we all know is there's current developments that are at different stages, but they're in the works as far as wanting to put in personal storage facilities in this community. And instead of making a decision on the spot on Monday, I requested that we have a more formal discussion on those items because there are lots of implications to just giving somebody permission to move forward, because you establish a use when you come in for a land use permit. When you actually build the structure, it's when it establishes the use. We've got multiple parcels. How do we permit those? And so I wanted to take a look at each individual commercial development today and then get your direction on how the city wants to handle these 3 individual developments. So that's what brings us here today. So we'll take a look at each individual development next, and then we can discuss some of the implications or conditions, how we want to permit, timelines, and we can go through all that. So let's start with I gotta remember the name of the plat. Thank you, TJ. Let's go with Fawn Lake Park First Edition.
Thanks
What
for
I'll do is I'll give a quick rundown of each development before we really get into the discussion on them. I'll give a quick synopsis and rundown of each individual project, and then we can have a discussion on each one at the end. So this one is in the limited commercial, light industrial commercial district. It's south of town off of Fawn Lake Road. There were two phases that were approved. The first phase, as you can see here, was the front, looks like 10 lots. And then A second phase was brought in and approved for these back lots to be platted in the commercial district. And since then, as you guys have probably all seen it out there, there's probably, the majority of them are built on, and they are being used for, well, it's a mixed use. The majority would be personal storage. I think there's one business established in there, but the majority of them are used for personal storage. And there's approximately 4 to 5 left to be built on in these. But the good majority of them are built on established use in this plat.
So Paul, just a clarification, Fawn Lake Park, the first phase is all signed out?
Correct.
The first edition is not? Are they both approved and platted and
The
moving forward?
plats have been approved, correct.
How come they're not signed out on the second one?
What do you mean?
Well, the signatures for,
Oh, it's just the copy that you received.
okay, so they're
yeah.
both done,
It-
they're both complete.
Yeah, it's just the one that we printed out. It was for your guys' just, yeah,
Okay.
from a visual standpoint, as far as the development goes. So that is Fawn Lake. And that was established, phase 1 was 2019, and phase 2 was, I think, a year later, 2020. Next commercial development is McGrath Addition. And he's got, so there's kind of two things. There's meets and bounds, where he just has the 2 lots side by side here. And then he came in 2023 and got the final approval for the McGrath addition, which is 8 lots back here. And so far, he's established 1 structure, which is on parcel 5, which is a commercial storage building, I believe, and it's individually owned.
Paul, is any of that in the 400-foot corridor?
Yes, I don't exactly know 100% where that 400-foot line is. I want to say it's give or take approximately right down the middle of this road. But I'd have to look and confirm that. I don't know exactly where that line is offhand.
Okay.
If you look at the north part of the certificate of survey, it has the measurements. So it kind of goes through that large house building.
I thought it was closer to County Road 3 than it was towards the development.
It gives you 208, it gives you the measurements at the top.
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe I was off base on that. So 200 to, well, you guys can do the math. I'll get into the next one and then we can
Go ahead.
readdress it. And then the third development that we're talking about today is Grand Review, second edition. So this is 31 individual parcels off of East Shore Road. These were approved, preliminary and final plat was approved just in 2024. This came before you guys not that long ago. This is also, the previous one was in the limited commercial district. This one is also in the limited commercial district. And currently no building has been done on this one. So those are the 3 developments that we're discussing today. Each one is a different developer. Each one is in a little bit different phase. Like we said, the one on Fawn Lake, mostly established. The McGrath addition One building has been established, and then the grand review, no building has been put on it. Two of which are in the limited commercial, one is in the industrial commercial district. So how the moratorium and amendment to the land use ordinance affect each of these developers. So the big thing is, even outside of the moratorium, the land use amendment changes, the big thing with these is personal storage, and whether we as a city want to continue to allow personal storage, because as it's stated in our ordinance, it's got to be a commercial use, and our ordinance doesn't see commercial use or personal storage as a commercial use. So really, I just wanted to make a note that whether we have the moratorium on or not, if they were to come into, right now to permit any of these structures, one, we'd be looking at the land use table saying, well, it needs to be a commercial storage building, and it would need to be a conditional use. And so that's what we've advised, the developers to do, but they would have to run it as a commercial use, which would be to rent and or lease. So regardless of the decisions that were approved on Monday, as far as city staff goes and how we can move forward from a legal standpoint, from an ordinance standpoint, we're saying that you need establish a commercial use. So it would be your guys' call as far as if we wanted to change our land use ordinance to figure out how to accommodate these type of buildings, and that's one discussion, because what I said after Monday, we have two discussions. We have one that is gonna have to be for another day, as far as what do we want to make what decisions do we want to make for the city moving forward? And what you guys, brought to me is, let's take a look at these three developers and how do we want to, one, how do we accommodate them, or how do we work through these developments? Because these are the ones that are currently being affected with some of the, not so much the changes, but how we've interpreted our ordinance. So again, that's just to highlight, the moratorium and some of the land use ordinance, and how they're affecting these developers right now. So going back into each individual one, should we start with Fawn Lake? Okay. Or let me ask this, do you guys have any questions off the top,
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have a moratorium currently still in place on storage buildings
We do. Well, for accessory structures,
for accessory structures?
yes.
So there should be no storage buildings being built right now
If
in the
you were-
city of Cross Lake?
If you have established principal structure on your parcel, you could come in for an accessory structure because you have you can permit it legally because you've established a principal structure. But also in our moratorium is how we've been mishandling accessory structures in certain districts. So, for example, the commercial district.
Yeah,
allowing accessory structures in a commercial district.
I realized that we were
Yeah.
handling accessory buildings.
So yes, we do
wrong.
have a moratorium still in place.
Across Cross Lake,
All
No.
of Cross Lake.
even if you could get it legally, the permit. Could you if you can get the permit legally as an accessory, you still can't build it until we lift that moratorium.
You could, if it's because it's the correct use of an accessory structure.
As long as there is a primary structure, right?
But
So-
did we
yes.
say that when we put it a moratorium on? Did we say that there's exceptions to it? Or-
That's not really an exception, it's just how our land use ordinance is written right now as far as accessory structures. And so you're allowed, I mean, we've always allowed, I mean, people, especially in the residential, we've allowed people to build accessory structures with an established principal structure throughout the moratorium because that is their correct use.
Okay,
And
we
it's
have.
the incorrect use that we put a moratorium on because that had been practiced.
I guess I just understood that we put a moratorium on storage sheds. I didn't realize that we're allowing ones that were accessory buildings and legal. I just thought it was across the board, but that's okay. Thank you for the explanation.
Well, I mean, Paul, just to clarify, so the two issues are, number one, putting personal storage units in a commercial zone, and also having accessory buildings as the only structure on a.
Yes.
On a
Permitting an accessory use as a principal structure.
Okay. So those are the two main issues right now.
Correct.
Okay. Do you want to share any of what our legal counsel provided us regarding some of the questions?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Do we
here.
have an extra one?
This is an extra one.
So just some of the questions after Monday that came up. And Joe, jump in at any point in time at this one. I believe you were the one who answered these questions. But one of the questions was, can't we allow personal storage in a commercial space? And what does it matter? Can't you go down in the zone like personal in commercial? And the response was, I'm not sure what is meant by a commercial space, but in terms of zoning, lesser uses are not automatically included. Land zoned commercial is to be used for commercial uses, not personal uses. Otherwise, your commercial properties, and there aren't many in Cross Lake, could easily be overwhelmed with non-commercial uses, thereby defeating the purpose of having commercial zones in the first place. The general idea is to bring in business, improve your tax base, and create jobs. Using a commercial building in a commercial zone for personal use does not do any of that. If someone buys or builds a commercial building in a commercial zone and uses it primarily for personal storage, it is and ought to be a zoning violation.
Clear.
Yeah, can we put a limit, well, let's go. Yeah, can we put a limit on storage buildings? Or can we put a limit on how many storage buildings should be allowed? While not uncommon in a regulatory context, number of liquor stores, for example, number of cannabis retailers, it would be an unusual approach in a zoning context. Typically, we limit through the terms of a zoning ordinance. Example, only permitted in certain zones, minimal lot size, building footprint requirements, and setbacks.
But Paul, I mean, that to me gives an alternative approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying you can't do it, it's just saying, you know, he says it's not uncommon, like limiting how many liquor stores, limiting how many, you know, various types of commercial enterprises, so why couldn't we limit the number of storage units?
Your mic's
Oh.
Yeah. And it is practice in other nearby communities. 50 Lakes you can have a commercial development of storage units, I think, and don't quote me on the exact lineal feet, but I want to say it's 4,500 lineal feet from the next. So pretty much allowing one development in the city of 50 Lakes because it's not very big. NISWA limits the number of buildings or the number of units per parcel in a commercial storage. So some of those things could be discussed.
A question, and I think, Joe, this is probably more for you. My question is, should we have a zoning component in there that is specifically for personal storage, buildings, that type of thing? Should we actually create such a
zone?
Zone. Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
Well, council, I mean, you certainly could do that if you're interested in continuing to have this type of land use in the city where you've got these developments of nothing but storage buildings. Certainly you wouldn't do that in a commercial or limited commercial district. It's not a commercial use. You have to come up with a different zone, different locations than in the commercial areas, because it's not a commercial use. I mean, my understanding is that is precisely what the city was trying to get away from, because you already have so much of it now. And the city of Cross Lake is has become known for this sort of thing, whereas most other cities try to avoid it from a zoning and land use perspective. But to answer your question, yes, you could, if you wanted to do that precise thing. It's basically the same thing as a mini storage type arrangement, just with bigger buildings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joe, I think the desire here is not to get rid of personal storage. The desire here is to get personal storage off of the main corridors, out of sight lines. So part of this proposal is a 400-foot buffer zone. And then back behind that, there is a real appetite for personal storage in this town, more so than probably for cabinet shops or other commercial activities. So, I mean, is that not true? I think we have got an appetite to allow these, it's just where to allow them.
Well, I don't know that across the board there's an appetite. I think, there's some people who would like to see, not to see any more, but, there's certainly a contingent of the population that feels the need. So, I mean, and for me, that's the balance of trying to ascertain, how do we appease everybody? How do we, allow for some storage, but not make that be something that's seen all over town?
Joe, would it help if we went down and got the opinions of the council, what direction they'd want to go into, so we could kind of refine this? Would it help you?
Well, certainly some sort of consensus from the council in terms of what the thoughts are for direction on land use would be helpful, yes, because that informs staff as to how we should proceed with any future changes or suggestions for your zoning ordinance.
So should we go down the line and each one of us give our opinion of what we'd like to see happen and then go from there? It just seems like we're kind of running around a circle here constantly. And I'd like to know what the opinions are, and then we got a direction that we'd want to go in.
Certainly, if council members are willing to do that.
Let's do that, Aaron. Can you start with you?
Sure.
Not to put you on the spot, but.
You are. First of all, I think when you get to industrial needs to be industrial and no changes and no storage. Okay, it's my personal opinion. I think along the corridor, what Dave is talking about is appropriate to define a distance off the corridor and reserve that purely for commercial, nothing but commercial. When it's off the corridor far enough, then I think they should be allowed to come in, and this is where I was going with my first question, is allow them to apply for a zoning change that is personal storage space, and is defined space, and then it goes into that. So I am in favor of certain pockets of storage, and I think they need to be CUPs, and we need to allow them and position them very carefully. Sandy?
Well, I agree with most of what you said. I just feel like it's the developers are people who really want the storage units, who are like driving this machine, and that I think there's a lot of people in the community who really like to see them limited. I'd like to establish some kind of a limit of how many. I think there are other communities that have done that how many we can have per, square miles or whatever. I think that would be a good alternative. I agree about the corridor, and industrial should stay industrial. And I have some problems with changing the zoning from commercial to personal. just so we can allow personal storage, because we don't know what's coming down the line. We don't know what commercial enterprises might at some point be interested in establishing a business, and especially with the National News Center coming, I think that might generate more interest in having some commercial businesses. So, you know, I don't know about having a zone of all storage units.
They have to come and apply per space.
But how do you deny it if you've got a zone that's specifically for storage units? So are we gonna have, like, I don't know, 100 storage units in one zone? I mean, how unattractive would that be? I mean, it's a dilemma. I'll admit to everybody, I'm really confused about what to do here, because I don't want our city to continue to be known as Tin City, and I want to preserve its beauty and its rustic appearance. And so, but I also want to acknowledge that there is a need for storage units. So how we go about making that compromise is, for me, the dilemma. And if anyone has a brilliant idea, I'd love to hear it. But that's just how I feel about it.
Okay. I heard, and is it okay if I mention, you guys, you don't care, do you?
Yeah.
I heard Sandy say that builders drive the need. The market drives the need. The builders will follow. If there's a desire for buildings, the builders are going to build them. When that gets saturated, the builders are going to quit. So it is a market driven.
That's fair.
People want buildings. The question is, what do we want them to do in the buildings? Do we want them to have living quarters? Do we want them to have, storage is storage. There's no septic, there's no ever, you know. So if we were to allow these storage buildings, they would be electricity, lights, storage, done. Aaron, if I may.
Yeah.
Aaron said absolutely no storage in the industrial space. Well, I disagree with that, and I think we've got, how many acres of industrial is there?
Offhand, I don't know.
120?
I was going to say, yeah, we've got about 440s of it, give or take.
Okay, so there's 160 acres roughly. I think certainly a percentage of that should be reserved for something in the future. If we had a pot grow place come in, would that where we'd want them to go? You know? Or if an asphalt company came in, we probably wouldn't want them in town, to be honest. But if we have to provide a spot for them, that's probably where we'd want them to go. So there should certainly be a percentage of the industrial space set aside for those areas. The other side of the thing is that it's not visible. I don't know how much industrial activity we're going to attract to this town. So why do we want to preserve 160 acres? You know, that's my thought. I think it's actually a pretty good area for limited amount of growth there. I think, to me, Joe, the most important thing is to protect the corridors coming into town. That's where people see the Tin City thing. To really expand on the screening. Right now, I think we got 10-foot building setbacks. That's not enough. And especially when they're common with residential areas. You know, the screening, I saw Nisswa had 3 times the screening. There's something in here. Triple the screening, you know, when they're in those kind of a markets. So, there is a real need for storage buildings in this town. It's just, do we want them all to be houses, $1 million storage buildings with all kinds of amenities into them? Or do we want them just to be empty buildings for primarily strictly storage? No functions. But certainly what drove this is to relieve the corridor of all these pole buildings coming in. The corridor being the 5 main arteries in town, the unsightliness. I guess that's all I want to say.
I agree with the 400 feet overlay on the corridors and protecting the main commercial space. But I agree with that storage should be allowed with proper screening in limited commercial and in the industrial. I don't see a big, huge push for industrial now or in the future. Maybe preserving a little bit of a percentage of it for down the road is a smart idea. But I feel like Mr. Aguinaw kind of has his own little deal going on back there where it's already been built and it's a perfect spot to keep building in one pocket and in one spot. But no, I'm all for the 400 feet, then personal storage in limited commercial with proper screening. If the CUPs need to be an option to make that happen, so be it. But
There should be a limit on the number of them?
no, I don't.
Okay, my understanding is this Grand Review second edition has no buildings on it right now.
That is correct.
So when we approve a subdivision like this, could we actually approve, Aaron saying we should have zoning for personal storage? If we had all the storage units in one area and they're off, and the screening, however we want to demand the screening be, I think, I don't have a problem with rezoning if it's in the right area. I don't want to see us put personal storage in commercial area. I agree that, there's a right spot for it. And I just wondered if maybe we should take the avenue of the additions that are brought in, the subdivisions. If the person that's bringing the subdivision in and asking for approval, if they could ask for a rezone of whatever we call it, personal storage sheds. That's all that's going to be built there. That's it.
And
I mean, and that has to go through public hearing process, and people have the right to weigh in, and it takes 4/5 of the city council to approve it.
Yeah.
I just think that might be a good way to handle it. Might not be the right way, but I'm just thinking that if we want to hold the storage units in one area, that would be the way to do it.
And I think right now, as our ordinance reads, we don't have like a planned unit development. For something like a couple of these, that would maybe be the ideal vehicle moving forward. But each individual parcel is seen by itself. And so certain, we want a conditional use, because each conditions may look differently on each individual parcel. And because they're split up in each individual parcels, that's why when they come in for a land use permit, that establishes the use. Because they could get a quarter of the way through the development and say, I've got a bigger and better idea and I'm going to change the use and I'm now going to do this, which they've got every right to do. But that's why, either you got to, I think a planned unit development would be good, because then they come before you guys and say, this as a whole is what I'm doing, and we can put conditions on that as a whole versus each individual parcel. That's a little bit harder because things change over time. And so now we're,
But you could avoid that if you brought in the whole addition and you don't bring it in as limited commercial or whatever. If you bring it in as a, I don't know what you want to call it, personal storage shed addition, and you don't have to worry about somebody going, well, I don't want to use it for that. Don't buy that lot in there. If it's not for personal storage, you're not going to, you're not going to be able to use it.
Well, I agree with that, and I think, I think we have to maintain the integrity of our zoning ordinances. I mean, you can't just say, well, it's zoned for this, but we're going to allow that. And I mean, pretty soon, there's exceptions everywhere. I think we have to maintain some consistency.
Yeah.
And it would alleviate people, even trying to put in, buildings where the use isn't proper, so.
I agree. I think we get a handle on it, we zone it, and that's the way it is. And we're not going to have it all over the place. We're not going to have it in every commercial area or industrial area or whatever if we just zone it.
We used to do a lot of spot zoning. I'm sure you remember that, Marcia Ralph.
Spot zoning doesn't work.
And we did away with that, probably 98% of it. And I'm grateful we did, because I think that was one of the better moves that we made.
Well, it's hard to control.
Is it safe to say everyone agrees with that 400-foot commercial?
Oh, I agree with that.
I think we all agree on that.
I think it should be 600 feet. I don't think 400.
Talking about what it is right now, but I think
I would like to expand it a little bit and have it be a little bit wider, personally.
But I think that zoning committee went and actually looked flagged it, and the zoning, planning and zoning agreed that 400 was adequate.
Okay, well,
We
You
did,
know, I guess if we're gonna listen to planning and zoning, we have them out there, and they're running out there, and they're checking the, you know, they're flagging at 300 feet, 400 feet,
And-
600 feet, and they agreed that 400 was.
Yeah. And part of the decision process on the 400 versus, you know, another number was based on the fact that even outside of the corridor, but yet in the limited commercial, there was gonna be no, you know, there was still no commercial or personal storage in the commercial
400.
district. We're still administering you need to establish a commercial business in order to build in the commercial district.
There's the first agreement.
Well, see, and we can get away from that if we have,
Yeah.
you know, the proper zoning. If we have people coming in that their intent is, this subdivision is going to be, and I don't know what that was the intent of the Grand Review, second edition or whatever, but if it's going to be sold for personal storage units, just come in and ask for zoning, get it in the zoning ordinance that zoning is provided in the ordinance, and move forward with it,
Yeah,
and we don't
'cause-
have to.
And we'll
be
need
listening
to,
to
yeah,
this.
we would just need to establish something in an ordinance, because when you come in for a preliminary plat, it's solely based on parcels, and splitting up the land into individual parcels versus establishing a use, unless you were to come, you know, before planning commission and you guys with, an actual, you know, plan unit development.
But when they bring in these additions, and it's limited commercial in that area, they have to bring in it as limited commercial.
Correct, but the limited, I mean, the limited,
Or whatever.
that gets established through a land use
Right.
permit.
And I'm
It's-
just saying that if you had, even if you didn't have the land use map showing that zoning, particular zoning, if there wasn't any yet, then it would be established by the ordinance allowing for that type of zoning.
Correct.
I have two questions, Paul. Number one, do you know of any other cities that have specific zoning for storage units?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't looked into every city out there. I've done a lot of research on, you know, surrounding cities as far as Crosby, Ironton, Nisswa, Walker, 50 Lakes, Breezy, Brainerd, Baxter, some of our surrounding communities. The majority of them read very similar to what our ordinance reads, as far as, you know, a commercial use needs to be established in the commercial district. And then, you know, a couple of the ordinance have further restrictions. I put Nisswa's in front of you, not because I'm not saying that's the direction we need to go, but I know one of the big topics that came up is how do we regulate as a city, what you can and cannot do in your building. And I just wanted to show an example of a city that, you know, they're a one-person staff in Nisswa, in a city that established standards.
Okay,
For
question number
regulations.
two. Would you be comfortable, you know, with your knowledge of the layout of the city, establishing certain limited areas that would be zoned only for storage units with proper screening? I still don't want them just sitting out there looking hideous. I don't care where they are in the city, but if we could, you know, control where they were and then also have proper screening, you know, trees around them, whatever, would you be comfortable with that?
Well, the hard thing about that is it's all privately owned land right now. So you'd be asking me to find land that's privately owned and establish that specific use. You know, I don't think the people behind me would appreciate me making those calls as far as what is good and what isn't good spot for personal storage. You know, I might have an opinion, but I don't think that is necessarily the right way to go, because I don't want to make the final call on that.
But I'm saying don't put it on the use map until you have a request for it.
You
And
know,
then that's planning and zoning, it goes through the public hearing, and that's when you change the map.
But isn't that just like spot zoning?
But you can't, how are you going to put a personal storage shed zone out there, you don't know who's going to want to sell those plots and stuff. It's not going to work.
To me, the benefit of having a personal storage, and I'll use Grandview because we've all been talking about it, that right there, because then you can limit through conditional use exactly what they can do there. They cannot run a business. They have to use it for storage. You know, you can come down a laundry list, so to speak, and determine. And if they sell it to somebody else, that CUP follows it. And if they want to change it, they have to come back before the commission to change the use of it for, they want to run a business, they want to have a body shop or whatever it might be back in there. And that's when you can say, no, you can't do that. So you could control the use beyond the person that's doing the building and that first owner.
And Grandview is being proposed with no septic, no buildings, just strictly storage.
That's,
Well, again, it's, right now, we approved the plat as 31 individual parcels. The use gets established with, when they come in for a land use permit. And so at that point in time, if they wanted septic, well, all that, that would come with the actual individual permit. So it's hard to take a look at the whole development because right now it's 31 individual parcels.
but you could look at it and say, that's what this is, and limit them down. Limit the developer to how he develops it.
It's just personal storage sheds. If you don't want a personal storage shed, then don't buy the lot.
Yeah, and that's why I think having like a planned unit development, because that would allow us to look at those things. It's hard to limit a developer without a proper ordinance to do so. I don't want to necessarily limit them, because if they did change, you know, we either have to take a look at it as a whole, but without the proper way to do that through our ordinance, you know, we're going down a slippery slope there versus allowing taking a look at each individual parcel. So we either need to add something to our ordinance that, well, we would need to do multiple things. We would need to maybe establish either a new district or a new land use within the limited commercial, because right now, to Joe's point, I mean, it's not allowable. So changes would have to be made because it's just not an allowable use. We can't just per how it reads, you know, we would have to change the use or a new zoning district, or say you can do this, but only through a planned unit development. And then that way we take a look at the whole development versus individual lots.
Okay.
Does Joe have an opinion on which way would be better?
Joe, yeah, do you have an opinion, Joe? And let me know if I'm misspeaking as well.
No, I think you're right, Paul. Doing it as a PUD is a potential option for putting in development-wide requirements. Having somebody come in and ask for a rezone for a particular parcel or part of a parcel, I think that's very problematic, to be honest. Mm-hmm. This needs to be a broader approach than that. I like the idea of the corridor piece. If the council is looking in that direction, that's a fairly straightforward thing to do. Easy to put on a map, easy to interpret, easy to enforce for the most part. Your more difficult thing is if you really want to allow personal storage, the hard part is just coming up with, you know, where and under what circumstances. I mean, it's easy to say outside the corridor, but there's a whole lot of Cross Lake outside the corridors, and we need some direction as to where that's going to go.
Well, could we do a combination of, changing the ordinance to allow limited personal storage in a light commercial area, but, subject to approval and, meeting certain standards, and you know, once you've got a certain number, you know, that we set a limit, then you can't build anymore. I mean, could we do a combination like that?
Sure. I mean, that, you could put that straight into your zoning ordinance, or you could put it as a factor, like in a PUD style arrangement that Paul was talking about.
But I'm not saying by parcel, I'm talking about the whole addition. I'm not saying by parcel. You're not going to have a choice. This whole addition would be,
Yeah, and that's where like a plan unit development, they would have to come in as a development versus as individual parcels, because you could, like I said before, you could get partially through your development and all of a sudden change your mind and say, well, I'm gonna now establish these type of uses, which is the hard part about, you know, how we've been, it's the hard part about what we talked about on Monday and just grandfathering it, you know, these in, in whatever direction you guys decide, but there's just implications to that because not all the lots are established, not all the uses are established, and so it's, you know, do we allow this, but if something were to change and they went a different direction, okay, now they're not going by what they were grandfathered in by, so it's just, how do we handle that in,
you can't have a mixed use in this idea of a plan unit development and bringing in an addition and rezoning it for personal use.
If you came in with a plan unit development, no, you couldn't have a mixed use.
There is no mixed.
Yeah, it would be coming in as a development as a whole.
Where are you at, Dave, on limiting the amount of storage?
Well, I think that's going to limit itself.
I say-
I think over time. It's just, it's where to put them is the biggest question. And then, Joe, I got a couple questions for you. Enforcement, if we were to require 30 feet buffer zone with spruce trees staggered, you know, trying to block 20% or leave, you know, 80% blocked vision of the development. And 2 years from now, 80% of those trees die. How do we enforce that?
Well, that's a pretty straightforward type of situation. I mean, typically and we see these types of buffers all over the place, you're going to have at least 20% die off, generally speaking. We have staff send them letters talking about as soon as we start seeing the die off, they have to replace within a certain amount of time, weather permitting, season permitting. And then if they don't do it, then we move to some other type of enforcement action, which is either fines or bringing a district court action declaring them in violation of city code and getting a court order forcing them to.
So in this city here, Joe, we have got a $75 a day administrative fine kind of in town for vehicles without licenses, whatever, different things. Could that be applied and $75 a day over time would leave an impact with somebody?
Yeah, you have to look at how that's set up in your code, but it very well may apply to the zoning, to zoning requirements. At that point, it gets to a certain number that's worth going after, then you have to get judgment in district court to make it enforceable. But yes, that is one option.
Yeah, but I mean, we could talk about this all day long, and if we don't have something that's enforceable, we're, spinning our wheels. As far as limiting the number of them, I think that's gonna do itself. The biggest heartache I got is the screening and getting them off the main corridor. That's, my story stops right there, if we can hide them.
So how does the rest of the council feel about changing the ordinance to allow personal storage, limited personal storage in a limited commercial area?
What do you mean by limited personal storage?
Because I still think, I know Dave thinks so, it'll limit itself. I'm not so sure about that.
The land will dictate how many units you can put in. I'm not a fan of limiting what you can and can't do or how many units you can have. That'll be dictated by the
I just mean throughout Cross Lake in general.
But let's talk about storage here, because we've got toy box storage as an established business. I don't think there's a bathroom or a facility in any one of those units. 103 storage is the same. People go in there, they park their boats, they leave. Now, you could have another storage park, and they could have kitchens and pool tables, and, you know, it could be a arguable living quarters in that storage park. So how do we restrict that? You know, just storage is one thing, but when they go over there to watch a football game and have a party and whatever, and like Grandview here, if there's 31 of them right there and they have a block party, that's gonna be disruptive to the neighborhood. If it's just storage, then they're just going in and getting their stuff and leaving.
We're as good a zone as just storage.
Okay, and then we gotta be able to enforce it is all. If we're gonna do something, we gotta be able to enforce it.
Just to keep us on task, you know, the goal of today was for city council to advise city staff on how to move forward with the commercial developments that are in town. Now, we also have a moratorium that we've been working through with planning commission. That's what was presented to you guys and that was approved, but we still currently we didn't take the moratorium off. We made some changes to the land use ordinance. We still seem to have a little bit of uncertainty on the exact direction we want to go. Do we go back to have a couple more workshops with the planning commission? I mean, city council can sit down and work through a couple of these things. I want the moratorium off as much as the next person, but I also want it to come off with certainty and direction from the council.
Well, I think we all want you to proceed, I believe, with the corridor overlay. Is everyone in agreement with that?
I was adding two things at my age at the same time.
We can't continue with it because it hasn't been adopted.
Well,
No,
it hasn't been adopted, but
for
it's
him-
been approved.
Yeah.
The
for-
corridor
With the
overlay
400
has been
feet.
approved.
No personal storage of 400 feet, correct?
Yeah. And so, yeah, what was brought to you guys today was how do we want to move forward with the commercial developments? How do you guys want to advise city staff to move forward? Do we go by the current ordinance that has been approved, but then 2 has been now interpreted correctly? Or do we find a way to work with the developers and allow them to do what their potential intentional uses were?
So my
And
understanding.
how do we get there?
Was the zoning ordinance approved at the last
Yes.
Monday night
Yes.
meeting? So I guess that's the reasoning for having a first reading and not just adopting it, because now we're already wanting to change things. So I just want to enforce the fact that that's the way it should be handled, is a first reading and then.
It hasn't been published yet either, and it takes 30 days.
Well, I'm just saying that this has been approved.
It takes 30 days.
Well,
that to
okay,
become
in 30
effective.
days it will
Yes.
be approved. And actually, we're already trying to make changes to it. So I think a first reading and then a second reading you can adopt.
But you want to know about the 3 specific developments, how you want us to proceed.
Yes, and
So let's just go through each one of them. Let's start with Fawn Lake Park.
Okay.
Let's just talk about each one of them.
great.
Who wants to start?
I did the last one.
Okay.
But
Fawn Lake Park, I think for sure that they should be allowed to continue their second edition that was built. They've got 4 or 5 lots left. Joe, to me, past practice is real important here, and we have been allowing this for years. You found a little loophole in our ordinance that kind of shut it down, but these guys have built their future around these developments. They've invested a lot of money. Best practice has allowed it to happen. So I think Fawn Lake should certainly be able to finish out what they've started, my opinion.
Fully agree.
Yeah, but not start anything new at this point until we have.
Just what's here.
Yep.
I'll agree with that.
you're talking about the Fawn Lake
Fawn Lake.
Park First Edition?
Yep.
Or Fawn Lake Park?
So it'll be this one here.
No,
So Marcia, what's your opinion there? Did you have one, or are you thinking?
On this, are we making a motion?
It's
to
the other one.
approve?
Well, we're getting the consensus here.
other page.
Yeah,
It's that one.
I'm fine with it if we're in the middle of it and we're trying to change the game plan in the middle of something that's already been started. Pretty hard to stop it.
Yeah.
And just a couple of follow-up questions to all that. You know, because it was right in the middle, I had received a permit, which was over the counter. I denied it and told them they need a conditional use permit, and that's for a commercial storage building that has to be rented and or leased. So they would need to come in for a conditional use permit for these additional parcels to finish their lot. So how do we permit these if we want to continue to allow them to finish? Because right now,
How have you permitted the past ones?
They didn't need a CUP, and now we're requiring them to have that.
correct.
I
And
guess
because
we're
right
not,
now,
we're not holding them up anymore, we're just having them go to the planning and zoning and make sure that they're doing everything according to it.
because they're in the
want.
industrial zone, and we don't have a permit for a personal storage building in the industrial zone. I mean, that's why we're here today, is because, you know, we don't have a way to permit it. Outside of a commercial storage building, that's a conditional use, and you need to establish a business. So that, I mean, how do we want to permit these? And then Joe, you know, just legal advice from allowing them to finish their lot, and do we just continue with what we did allow? Or do we set a new precedence for our last four? You know, that's my question to you and Joe.
Joe, can you weigh in on that?
So we changed the ordinance, right? We changed it so that you can't have an accessory use without a principal use, because that's just basic land use rules, right? So now what you have, as I understand, is it's for commercial storage, not personal storage. Commercial storage, then you need a conditional use permit. So if somebody says, well, let's just let them do what they did in the first phase, the response says, we're past that point because we changed the code. They can't have a bunch of personal use storage buildings in there, because there's no accessory use, there's no principal use to go with all those accessory uses. See what I'm saying?
But isn't that true 2 months ago, when they were being permitted for the last ones they did?
Well, 8 months ago, but.
8 months ago,
regardless.
whatever, you know? I think the code still at that, even though we didn't know it, said there's no personal storage. And we permitted them.
The code had a land use table that said accessory storage structures were permitted in a limited commercial district. And that's how all these popped up, as I understand it, was pursuant to that interpretation of the land use table. That table's been changed.
The interpretation of accessory buildings was changed, defined, according to,
And when was that changed? Just in the last couple of weeks?
no, our attorney defined it.
Yeah, Joe, I guess just to confirm, we really didn't make any changes as far as the definition of accessory structure, accessory use, commercial use, and commercial storage. Those have stayed consistent even prior, and so that was the contradiction to, you know, what was happening in town. People were coming in for these buildings when it was a contradiction to what our ordinance said.
Yeah, we were advised by the attorney that we were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that changed. We were doing it wrong because storage buildings were accessory buildings, and that was
We just clarified it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we modified the land use table.
Correct. We took one item off that was,
Mini storage.
Yeah, I mean, it was even, there was 2 land use items that were contradicting themselves, and we just went with the more strict, we went with the one that matched our definitions.
But that table is not in effect yet, correct?
Correct. That is not into effect. That is with the ordinance that were accepted on Monday, so 30 days from Monday, last Monday.
I'm going to ask you a question just a little bit off here. County Road 120, did we put that in our? No. So they're not in the 400-foot
That
corridor?
is not in the designated corridors.
We missed it. We missed that highway.
Well, we didn't miss it. We're aware of it.
Well, it's either we should add it or acknowledge that it's not, one of the two.
It's already, you can't put any more on there. All that frontage is already used.
No. County Road 120 was not put in that it has a corridor.
Right. But I mean, that was by design, I think.
Was it? I didn't think it was. Was it?
That was,
Okay.
We just didn't include it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand.
It's not one of the main corridors
yeah.
coming into town.
True.
So it wasn't
Okay.
included.
Move on. I guess I'm in favor of letting him finish what we had already approved and moved on. But I think we have to absolutely stop it and say, this is the date.
Well, until we decide what we're going to
Yeah.
do, if we're going to change
Yeah.
some areas, but at least finish the part that he did. So I think we're in pretty much consensus. Everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Yeah, and one quick question for Joe again. I mean, legally, again, going back to the permitting, if this is the direction the council and the city wants to go, how do we make that exception legally so that, there aren't implications or ramifications on other items down the road? And how does city staff handle that?
I think for us to get into the legal part of it right now is going to be tough.
Well, that's why you.
I think he's asking
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Aaron.
I
don't
know
think
Joe
he's
is there,
asking
but I
us.
think Paul and Joe need to do some work together and bring it back to us on Monday night.
Yeah, and part of what the discussion today was your guys' direction
But that
for
would be-
city staff to go. So that could be part of the direction is to work with Joe on
Yeah.
how to,
Figure out a workaround.
I think we should put on the permits that the reasoning behind approving it is that they were in the midst of it, and the clarification of accessory buildings was, just something that points to the fact that we're doing it, we're accepting this, but in the future, not anymore.
But, for not to serve as a precedent for future requests or.
Joe, I want to bring something up about that Fawn Lake addition too. I believe when the owner came in for the property split to do the development, I think he was told that screening was required. Is that not true?
I'd have to look at the conditions. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yes, it is.
I believe on the front ones, I don't believe on the back, on the second phase, but
Okay, but the front ones, there was screening required. Now he has built it out and sold them all individually. So how do we go back and enforce the screening that was required originally on the Fawn Lake side?
What you're going to find is we did not specify what he was to leave. He assured us that he would leave screening on every lot, and that was our mistake. We screwed up.
There's no screening.
Yeah, Joe, there is
that's
no
my-
screening
that's my
anywhere on
memory of
that
it.
property. So what can we do to go back to say, you could go on and finish up, but you got to do this, and you got to make sure they grow?
I'd look back at the approvals that were issued and what your code looked like at that time. But if it supports the idea that the developer was responsible for screening that property, then, the city could potentially commence legal action against him if it isn't undertaken. I mean, it's already mid-October at this point, but if it isn't undertaken, next spring to get that accomplished.
Yeah.
The problem is now we're dealing with, and again, I'm not that familiar with that site. The problem, as I understand, is that we're dealing with land sites that are now owned by others.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
But can we just send a nice letter out, ask the developer to put his screening in like he promised, and instead of threatening him with legal action, just
Well,
take the
it always
high road?
starts with the letter, yes, but you have to make sure that you've got the ammunition behind it as well.
Well, if
Okay,
the-
but we got two other develop that we haven't talked about yet, we're moving to, and we're gonna require screening from them, and we're kind of authorizing them to go and sell them individually, so how are we gonna not make that mistake again? How are we gonna ensure that the screening goes in before they are sold, and then we got all these individuals that we're dealing with?
They now have a CUP requirement, am I correct?
Correct.
And in the CUP.
As of right now.
Then we're going to have to, now we're only going to catch the ones that haven't built their building yet. We'll have to go back and see what that builder will do for us, but we can
They're
catch.
individually, we're doing
We
it
can catch the
individually.
individual ones through the CUP.
Going forward, but I don't see how we could go backwards after the city didn't
Well,
even
it
enforce
depends
their
what's.
own ordinance with.
It depends what's in the file.
Right, but I mean, how, okay.
Yeah.
You could make it contingent for the new ones to screen the old ones.
Well, you could, maybe, yeah,
That's where you got some leverage.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah. Make a note of that, Paul,
Okay,
because screening should have been done, it wasn't.
yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the McGrath edition. Who wants to start this one?
Well, it's really only one additional building, right?
No, he's got 8 lots, I believe, and there's 1 building built, so there's 7 additional buildings that have to go in, I believe.
But
Is that
they're-
right?
Correct.
But they're all behind,
No,
right?
one is right on Highway 3. The one lot is right on Highway 3.
I thought that got taken out.
Yeah,
The one right on County Road 3, I thought that got taken out.
I don't think.
Yeah,
Or
there-
it was discussed that nothing was gonna
No,
be
it
built
was-
there, and it was just gonna be safe.
No, he
There-
understands it's part of the corridor.
Yeah,
Right.
there are not any
Nothing's-
on County Road 3.
But this other stuff is, the only one that would be affected by the corridor would be Lot 7.
Yeah, and again, I don't know where 400 feet is.
Come
But,
back here,
you know,
see,
here's the-
see where it says Block 1? And you got a line coming up on the left of it? No, Block 1, you had your pencil on it. Down?
Yep, block 1.
Okay, just to your left a little bit, that line right there? Yeah, that's roughly 400 feet.
Okay. But, yeah, here are the
Yeah.
here's his development, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then he's got a meets and bounds for these two that are not included in this plat.
Yeah.
It's separate, but he's got. a
Where
building
is the Pet Lodge
Here.
building on that map?
It's, on 10.
On 9. It's on
Or is it
9.
on 9?
Right where number 9.
Thank you, Jeff.
And where on 9 is it? Is it to the right side, Jeff? I mean, is it closer to the cul-de-sac?
The main building,
Yeah,
it is basically between, where it says 9 and block 1, basically, or just to the left of block 1.
So in here?
No,
okay.
Thank you, Cheryl.
What building is on there now, a personal storage shed or what?
Oh, right here, so.
All I hear is building.
I just feel like, it's no different than the previous one, as long as we, require proper screening, it's off the corridor, it's,
Well, is 9 the piece of property that the Pet Lodge is on?
yes.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no other buildings going there that's proposed right now?
There's 2 buildings on lot 9 currently.
And that's,
Here's the
Lot 9.
Pet Lodge here.
okay. So Lot 7 would be the only one that goes within the 400 feet?
Well, and 10, number 10's in the corridor.
Oh.
technically build something on 7, right where that number is, and be off the corridor.
Yeah, I guess if 7 was built to the rear as far as it could,
Yeah.
leaving the corridor with screening.
So,
Lot 10, I would say nothing there.
Yep.
Right.
so he would be, that's a pretty good size lot. 564 feet long by 104 wide. That's a pretty good size lot. If I'm reading my bullfoot rifle.
So lot 7, I guess my opinion would be lot 7 could stay like it is, but you can't build on the road side of that lot. You gotta build back.
Unless it's commercial. It could be a.
Unless he rents it out as commercial.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
You also can't build under the power line.
Yep. And it has to abide by the new architectural standards
Yep.
and proper screening.
But I think 1 through 6,
But I would say the rest of it in back would be all right.
I don't see.
I
an
agree,
issue
I don't have any problem with that.
with it.
But the screening standards are something you guys gotta figure out, to put good screening standards in.
That's something that I think, working with the builders and the commission, I think that can be.
And do that under conditional use. Do that as one of the conditions.
So there's just a lot of inconsistencies in the two already, just between conditional use versus not conditional use, architectural standards, not architecture, I mean, there's a lot of legal stuff here that is just tricky. Because with the first one, and we can move forward with what whatever you guys decide.
Again, the spirit is to protect the corridor.
Correct.
Okay.
So the thing I'm wondering about is what is someone asking that is not consistent with the new land use ordinance? Let's hear somebody say what they want to do that's not consistent with it. Because if it's consistent, we don't have a problem.
Well, what's inconsistent is having a personal storage on a, like,
It's zoned commercial, so
Right.
it should be rented or leased.
right,
That's what it is, that's what it was, that's what it will be.
Exactly.
Unless you do some special exception. So, Jeff,
That's what we're doing.
what do you, I mean, can you work with the ordinance as it's written, or what are you asking for?
Well, it was mine as personal storage before all this stuff happened. If it wasn't, I would have pulled a road off the highway to the business park if that was the need.
Okay, we gotta be careful here, folks, with public comment. I feel like I hear a little bit of it. I'm gonna go back to protecting the corridor and screening.
Yeah.
So,
But both these are off of the corridor. I'm just saying, there's already inconsistencies with how you're letting one go through, and now we're talking about conditions and screening, and all these things were.
I thought
the
that-
McGrath
well, we
is
talked
saying-
about screening with the first one, though.
I thought that was implied with the
I
first
just,
one.
I just want to make sure that we're looking at, I mean, we have to look at them individually,
Right.
but I'm just saying, it's us staff that has to deal, work
Right.
through this at the counter, and
Whatever,
so,
whatever we're requiring
Yeah.
of the McGrath is what I think we should also require of Fawn Lake, as far as screening, et cetera.
and architectural.
And architectural standards, yes.
Architectural standards,
Yep.
and, because
Yep,
the reason I brought that up is, the new architectural standards are in the ordinance that was passed, but that was not what they were going by before.
Right.
And so we just want to be.
So we are going by the new ordinance now?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the
If we-
architectural standards was what, 2-foot overhangs and windows in different color
Well,
shades?
now that I say that,
It's more.
both of these are outside of the corridor, so we didn't change architectural standards.
Right.
Now that I'm second guessing myself here, so,
Okay.
correct, so yeah, they would just be allowed to continue with the same look that
Okay.
they were going with.
And going back to Fawn Lake and the screening now, he's got 4 or 5 lots he wants to do, so before approval of that, we gotta make sure the screening is put in that was supposed to put in originally. And I don't know what kind of security we're gonna have and that screening is gonna be put in and growing and kept growing over the years, short of having some kind of performance bond or something posted. And the point of that is we're trying to get everybody to work together to put screening in and make it look as good as it can do, you know? And I hate to be the bad guy and say I don't trust you, so you gotta bond it, but it's kind of, history has proven itself that you have to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. My whole goal was, my comment was, I just didn't want you guys to pick through the things you liked with the new ordinance changes and disregard the ones that you don't like as far as the commercial
Thanks
developments.
for keeping us on task, Paul. Appreciate that.
So,
Number 3.
just, for McGrath addition, you guys, are allowing him to continue to permit buildings for personal storage. Again, it's gonna have to come down to staff working with our city attorney on legally how to do that as far as our ordinance goes moving forward.
What are we gonna do with the 2 additional meets and bounds lots that aren't really identified here? Are they legitimate lots?
They're legitimate lots, yes.
So he could sell those today, or, I mean, they're marketable lots?
Jeff, I don't actually know, are there buildings on there or not right now?
One is sold, and then they are part of the association for the road maintenance and stuff on that back there.
So they're gonna be, how come they weren't numbered like the rest of them?
Because those were done as to start off with. before
Okay.
the actual.
But they're the same as what you got going.
You're right, Marcia.
So again, screening and architectural standards.
So you're allowing those 2 to go through?
No architectural standards back there. They're
they're
out
outside the
of the
Well,
400.
the ones that are abide by the ones that are currently in our ordinance.
Yeah.
Paul, there is architectural standards,
Correct.
even outside the commercial.
That's what I thought too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
but not adopting new ones
Right,
that we've established in the corridor.
right.
For these, because they're outside. And
We put
there's
our-
architectural standards, you're correct, but we didn't change the ones outside of the corridor in the limited commercial. We kept them as is. We changed the downtown district, the waterfront district, and then the limited commercial and industrial within the corridor. Outside of the corridor in the limited commercial and industrial, we kept as is.
There are small architectural standards that have been in the ordinance for 11 years. And that's at 25% change in the front side, and there are small ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just
bet old.
impose the new standards to everything that goes on myself. We just need to clean up and dress up stuff, you know?
Have enough to work with?
Well, we got one more development, so.
On my grass.
Oh, yes.
Okay, who wants to take Grandview?
I don't know.
Marcia hasn't started one.
I don't know.
Start one.
Okay, Marcia, you want to start Grandview?
So with Ballin Park, you all agree to go ahead with personal storage. Are you all on board with allowing personal storage on the ground?
Yes.
I believe so.
Yep.
With screening, with the conditions.
I heard that.
Okay. Screening's important. I don't know if you've heard that or not. but screening-
In caps. Granby Review, second edition. That's limited commercial, right? And this is the one that I thought we should, if it's being all sold for personal storage sheds, like McGrath, I think they should be rezoned to that particular personal storage shed zone, but
But, yeah, that zone
Right.
yeah,
doesn't exist.
I'm just, yeah. I don't know, I guess I don't have a problem with moving forward with it if we're allowing these other 2 additions to do it. I don't know how we can say no, but I'd really like to see us do like a planned unit development or a zone where the whole addition saying it's personal storage shed. If that's the intent, Same thing with the McGrath. If it's the intent to put all personal storage sheds on there, let's just rezone it and be done with it.
So do you mean no plumbing, no septics, just storage buildings? Is that what you mean? Yeah, okay.
No shelves or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
At least from what I've seen, there's very little screening on this one.
The ability to, you mean?
They can plant stuff.
We got to put it in there.
They have to put it back.
Then I guess I would just put in there that you want screening from County Road 3 and East Shore Road. I don't know what's on the other side. Anything? Woods. Woods?
Residential's on the backside,
Yeah.
where we are, and that's what I'm concerned.
So screening, like 3 times what's normal
But-
or something?
They've already kind of
Spruce
promised
trees.
zoning or screening there.
Yes.
Let's screen all 4 sides.
We already went through this in the developers agreement. It's all in there.
Right.
You signed off on it.
It's all signed off to already screen, but we've already talked about implementing
Okay,
on it.
that, no public comment. We're just going to tell you what we want to do.
That's a given. Screening. What? All 4 sides.
There's
Do we have a-
screening involved?
I'm done.
So the screening and then to make sure it keeps screened.
Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to put in here, because I went over and talked to the old folks last weekend, and there was a lot of burning of brush and stuff during this road building. And if anybody questions it, stop and ask them how it was, but they were walking around with oxygen masks on because they couldn't breathe. So, I'd like to see that no burning on that brush during the development phase. They should just call it out of there. Burn it someplace else. That was, there was a big outcry about the smoke and the.
Yeah, and again, it always comes back to city staff and how this is gonna come before the planning commission, and to say we need screening, which I think is great, but, that's somewhat subjective. Unless we have an ordinance that says you need X amount of this, or you need a percentage, or you need this height, to say we need screening, that just puts the
think, Paul,
commission in a tough spot.
In areas like this that are sensitive to residential areas, I think we have to be specific.
Well, and I agree, and that's what I'm asking for, I agree with that we need screening, I just, in order for us to administer the ordinance and for the planning commission to have proper guidance from you guys, we just need to get into proper, more specifics on this.
Were
And that's
there
why- but that's-
large brush
yeah.
piles being burned? Is that it?
Yeah.
Was there large brush piles?
I don't know.
I mean, that shouldn't be allowed anyway, but
I'm sorry, what did you say?
it said, was it large brush piles that were being burned in the area?
I'm assuming, I didn't see them, but.
And-
Okay.
And, that's why it comes down to too, how do we permit these buildings? Do we look at it as an individual basis and requiring CUPs under
I
the
would
new
say
ordinance?
that- I would say you probably have to.
Yes.
I hate to burden staff with that, but I don't know how you can't. Because they're going to sell the lots, you're going to have individual people come in, and you got to be able to put those teeth into it.
Have to what?
Conditional
Require
use.
CUPs for each individual.
Like, starting going
Well,
forward.
when they actually build the building, that's when the CUP comes.
Did we
Doesn't
do
come
that
till
with
then.
McGrath?
No. So the McGraths, they don't need a conditional use, or they do need a conditional?
I think here they needed a conditional use.
Well, we kept it to legal advice, and I'm gonna ask that question on all 3 too, because do we need conditional uses? Do we not? Do we allow them to keep going with what they?
Well, can we say that when they're adjacent to residential neighborhoods or residential uses, they need it? Can you do that?
No, I think you do it for all or you don't do for any.
That's right, all or nothing.
Well, how do CUPs give us more control?
For sure.
Then I think the more control we have, the better.
The thing of it is part of the development, we heard a lot of talk and assurances that we will get a lot of setbacks, especially with the residential and the ones where there's water runoff issues, okay? The city, not P&Z, but the city made them go to a much higher standard of water runoff of what they're forced to hold on their own property and so forth. So a lot of that stuff has already been done and stated to the commission, okay? So, we'll deal with it from there. The commission is the one that'll have to.
If they need a conditional use.
If needed, yeah, as needed.
With a conditional use, you can deal with that.
But, well, if you're going to put a conditional use here, you need to go back to McGrath.
Well, I think we should. I mean, if that's an issue, then I'd rather err on the side of
We didn't say
too
it,
much.
okay?
Yeah,
So-
Mr. Mayor, there was a suggestion that planning and zoning could be heard. I'm asking if I might be heard.
Okay. I respect planning and zoning and the time they put into this, so absolutely.
Well, thank you. And Paul, in support of what we did, first point is, we did make architectural standards in most of the divisions of land use.
Correct, all along the corridor and then.
And commercial, and waterfront. We added,
Within the corridor and then, but also all of downtown district and all of waterfront.
exactly, and light commercial.
Within the corridor.
No, it was in all, Paul, it was in all those subdivisions of land use, okay? So there is enhanced architectural standards in all of the land use designations that was approved in the latest thing a week ago.
Are any exempt? Are there any areas that are exempt from architectural standards?
I don't think so. I think we,
Again, what was approved is outside of the corridor, but still within the limited commercial. There's architectural standards, but the ones that we applied to the corridor that were above and beyond did not apply to outside of the corridor.
okay, all right, point taken. So regarding the 3 parcels, I understand that things were purchased and agreements made, but I think you can require conditional use permits regardless of what you're going to allow to go there. That gives us some ability to have a conversation about screening, et cetera. So
I think that's what we're trying to do.
I just wanted to make that clear, and in support of what Aaron is saying, that should be one for all.
Yep.
Now,
All
the
the
third
same.
one, I have a little bit of a difference in. When Danny's Highway 3 was approved, that was one thing, and they were approved. And look, those storage buildings would not be approvable right now under the new ordinance, right? Because it doesn't meet the 400 feet.
Oh, right, yeah.
The parcel behind there was not acted upon. We just recently approved the plat. So what's proposed there has not come before the commission. I don't think it was approved with a carte blanche for personal storage. That's limited commercial. It should come through the process fully and be considered for proposal and use. It's limited commercial, so it still should be rent or lease.
And it's within the corridor.
No, it's not within the corridor. Golden, that one is not. It's not within the corridor, but it still is limited commercial, so that means it's supposed to be rented or leased. It's commercial use and should come before the commission for consideration. That's all I'm asking. That's what our feeling, I mean, that's my interpretation of how the Planning and Zoning Commission was asking for things going forward.
So it wasn't approved unlike McGrath and the...
No. It was platted only, and that was only just recently.
Okay.
And it was designated or purchased, long after McGrath and the light industrial. So,
Absolutely not. That thing came through the ranks as personal. When we started, it came through your administration first, that was going to be a storage park. We got shot down at the council level when they started saying, maybe not.
No, Danny, I think yours was approved, the other one was not.
It was approved. If you look at here, look at the recordings, it was approved on it. It was.
The plat was approved.
No, the intended use on the whole thing as we met with the council.
I don't think it
out
was,
there.
Started with planning and zoning, everybody that was on that site was aware that it was going to be private storage. And it was presented to the neighbors as private storage too, and not a commercial development because of the noise, and that's.
And hence the moratorium on the use.
Correct.
That's when it got shot down.
It didn't get shut down.
Well, it got paused. It got paused.
Moratorium on after you.
We approved the plat, but not the use.
Exactly.
We approved the plat, but not the use.
We knew what the use
Yeah.
was, and that's
Okay.
how we presented.
And that's why we put a pause on it.
Okay, where are we at? I heard part of what Marcia said and not all of it, but we haven't come down the line. Okay. Were you done, Marcia? You were done?
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done.
Oh, where's Jackson?
Jackson, he's getting some water. Go ahead, Dave.
What are we doing, our opinion on what to do with this one?
Yes.
Grand review.
Well,
second.
I would say, strict screening standards. I think the architectural standards, David, Mr. Fuse, what you guys did, I think should apply all over, not just the corridor. And the standards aren't that great. 2-foot overhangs, a little bit of a window in the thing and a color change. But that is just to make the whole town look better, and that's our intent. So
No, I'm fine. I'm just,
I feel kind of strongly about that.
Jackson's
And
next.
screening.
What?
You're next.
I went to go get water, sorry.
No,
Grandview,
Marcia
second
had
edition.
finished. Dave now spoke up. It's your turn.
I think Grandview should be personal storage. I agree with that.
Okay?
Did you guys say?
Oh, yes.
So you think, also agree that it should be personal storage?
Strictly personal storage.
Right.
No
Rezone it.
sewers, no facilities. I mean, the conditional use should be park my boat in there, lock it, leave.
Okay.
Storage.
Can we?
Then we should rezone it to personal storage. It's so simple. I
Can we
don't,
enforce
why are you
that?
fighting it?
Is that enforceable?
Yeah, either, that's why we made us get sewer design on 31 lots.
A primary and an alternate. I mean, there's lots,
There's 62 sewer designs on that property.
And again, it's hard to enforce something that wasn't
Right.
a use right now.
But if it's just going to be personal storage, why do you need sewer?
Well, whatever the beginning was,
Huh?
We demanded it.
whatever the beginning was is what it should be.
Well, I'm saying the city, that's how things get developed. You have to show the sewer, you have to show the well. But Dave was, I don't know if he was finished or not.
Well, you get stopped in the middle of the tracks. Now, if we're gonna allow them to have sewer, then we're gonna have 31, I'm looking at it as basic residence there, which I don't agree with in that area, so.
In the beginning, it was presented as storage or commercial development. One or the other, or it was both. And you guys, in the ninth inning, pushed for commercial businesses. In the beginning, it was pushed as private storage because it was much quieter for the residents. So,
Private storage without facilities, but now you're saying we made you do the sewer thing, so.
how come storage buildings can't have a bathroom?
Because they turn into a house, Dan. That's what happens. That's evolution. And now we're gonna have,
Use also though, and you have the power to enforce that if that happens.
Well, let's forget about mixed use and let's just go back to, let's just rezone it. Grand review and
what's the
McGrath.
zoning gonna be, Marcia?
You add it to your ordinance and you just have a, I don't know what you want to call it.
Personal storage.
Personal
so-
storage sheds, PSS.
Yeah.
Pissed off.
I like that.
Okay,
Is that a motion?
We could get shirts made.
Well,
You know-
I'm just saying it. We wouldn't be going against the ordinance if we just added the personal storage area and we have 2 sites now for personal storage and there are no more sites unless somebody comes in with a new subdivision and they want to make it, and then they got to go through the whole process, and maybe we'll say no.
So kind of how they petition us if they want to go from an RR5 to an RR2, case-by-case basis, is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that these additions could come in if that was, the intent was personal storage all
Case by
along.
case.
You know, just let them have the, rezone it to personal storage and,
If we're going to allow them to go forward with personal storage, then I agree with Marcia. Instead of it violating our ordinance,
right,
we should maybe consider
exactly.
those particular areas, and that's it for now. And, you know, we can always address other areas if it becomes necessary. But if the neighbors were, you know, assured that this was going to be personal storage only, then I think that that should be a requirement because less noise, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that should be allowed to be changed.
So that will apply to Jeff and that'll apply to Dean, correct? This personal storage rezone?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to add on your land use tables, you're going to add, you don't have RR2 on there, which we all agreed we were going to do, and then the personal storage shed.
Yes.
Land use.
Yeah, there is, I mean, Joe brought up, there's spot zoning. I mean, we're gonna have now three areas that are specifically for personal storage, which, so be it. But then, I guess, yeah, future development, if, you know,
Well, and is
does
the
it, will it
industrial,
now forever be personal storage, or, you know, that's what we're deciding on.
Yeah.
That's it.
so you're gonna, on the Fawn Lake one, you're gonna do personal storage zoning for the 2 additions that have been approved, no further for now? I mean, stop it there? Or are we gonna do the whole industrial park personal storage?
I think we should do just the addition. Just do the addition. Why do you want to get wild with it?
I don't want to go up further, developing more stuff.
2 additions that have been approved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, Joe, do you wanna weigh in on this? You got an awful concerned look on your face.
Well, wow. Rezoning additions after the fact is a little bizarre. I mean, can we do it with permission of the landowner or with the land? Yeah, we can do that. I am a little concerned about the spot zoning concept when you start doing it within one area like that. Division by subdivision, that's a little odd. But I can talk that through with Paul. We're gonna have to have some conversations about all this as to how logistically this is all gonna work with your zoning ordinance. The other thing I would point out with respect to Grand Review, that was different than the other two because it's all was done after the moratorium was in place, if I recall correctly. That's a late deal. There are no structures on it. And in terms of the septic work, that was required because it was it's a limited commercial zone. So I don't think the fact that there is some septic design required in there has any impact as to whether the city prohibits these shed homes on this parcel. Just my 2 cents worth
Okay.
on that piece.
You got all that, Paul? Can we close the meeting now?
Charge.
So I guess you guys are all in agreement that you want to rezone all 3 to personal, some sort of personal
It just kinda
storage
makes
zone.
sense, doesn't it, to do
Well, I
that?
think it's better than us, like purposely violating an ordinance. I don't like that idea, so.
And it's really not spot zoning if you're doing a whole addition. I mean, technically, it's not by parcel, it's by addition.
But I think there has to be somewhere in there that these can only be used, if we're going to rezone it for personal storage, that's what it's going to be. And it's not going to be mini houses or, whatever.
Does Jeff
That'll
have the
be stated
ability
in the
to
ordinance.
expand his development down there? Or is he using up using up everything you got? So Fawn Lake Park has got the ability to expand there, and they'll have to come in and try to plead their case to the city to see if we want to expand it for the third edition, because we're only approving the first and second.
And just,
I thought
to
the first
reiterate,
was over with.
The first is done.
But now we're going to rezone that into
I think
personal storage, I guess.
I think of a rezoning, we have to go through the public hearing process. I mean, we can go ahead and say we're going to do that and let them proceed, but we're going to go through that rezoning process. We have to go through that. Public hearing and rezoning and 4/5 on the
I think we just let them get their projects done and worry about rezoning later and ask more questions on it.
Is that good advice, Joe?
No. We need to get that zoning done first, so that they're developing in accordance with the zoning ordinance instead of in violation of it.
that makes sense.
So what I'm hearing is we have to, next week, get that started, or actually today, we have to get that started.
Well, let's call for a public hearing. I'm sorry. Let's call for a public hearing on rezoning those 2 additions.
3.
Well, yeah, city staff and the
Yeah.
city attorney will have to work through this, because there's going to be a lot to it.
You have to amend the ordinance.
What kind of time frame, Paul, are we, or Joe maybe, what kind of time frame are we talking? These guys are sitting on properties that, I mean, they've got a lot of money invested waiting for our zoning to change.
To do a zoning amendment, I mean, it is a process that's similar to any type
No, I
of
understand.
variance,
30
conditional use.
30 days and all that.
Preliminary
Yeah.
plat.
But how soon,
Yeah, and we need to get it in the ordinance.
yeah, how soon can you do that is my question.
I mean, it's going to be a 2-month process based on being able to publish it at least 60 days,
But-
yeah.
So this will slow it down even more.
So a 60-day
Aren't
process.
we saying that they can proceed with the permitting and,
What's the sense of putting in a new zoning district if you're gonna just let them do it? I mean, it's done, now it's in violation, that's what he said.
but I'm saying, okay, let's get the ordinance amended that we approved already. We're going to amend it, and then if we could have that at the council meeting, is that possible? Add that zoning, that land use table to it, and then a description of
Not
what
this-
can be allowed in
Not this
that.
upcoming one. We don't have time to publish it, and, I mean, that's too quick of a turnaround for this upcoming one.
But we could have a first reading.
Yeah, or we could, we could
Have a
special-
first
we could have
reading
another
and
spe-
then-
We could have another special meeting.
I mean, I know it's an inconvenience for the developers and it slows them down, but I think it's, with a great deal of tolerance and understanding that we're even proceeding in this vein. So, I don't think that there should be any complaints about that. I think there should be appreciation. So,
I would just like to clarify for Char's minutes, you keep saying 3, so I'm asking. Also, Jeff's meets and bounds was also mentioned, so that would actually be 4 if you want his 2 lots in the meets and bounds, because it's in his association, has nothing to do, it's still not legally in his plat. It's 2 separate, so that would be 4 if you want to do it, that's all I'm saying.
Thanks, Cheryl.
But don't they have to have that approved don't they have to have that new addition approved?
No, well, it has been, it's 2 separate. There's a meets and bounds, and then there's a plat, so they're separate right now. They're right next to each other, but they are separate.
Well,
They're
And both have
separate.
been approved.
So when you bring them in, they got to have approval to be brought in, right? No? She's saying
I'm not
4.
following you. The plats have been approved, the meets and bounds have been
Okay.
approved, and the plat has
They
been
have been.
approved. Yes,
And if we rezone that area, they'll be part of that rezoned.
is what, Cheryl was bringing
So
to
if
your
it requires 4, it requires 4 because of the different description or something, huh?
Char, are you clear on that? I think so. Okay.
And,
Good for
yeah.
you.
And
Yeah.
Well, it seemed like we were gaining traction on letting these guys do their projects before this whole rezoning issue popped up. Was that not the case, or was that the case? It seemed like we were gonna do something here today that was gonna get them building again, but now we just pushed them out another 60 days because we decided to rechange the zoning.
Well, we're,
Exactly, well, that's what I'm saying, it seemed,
Around today, if you let us permit under a commercial building and lease it to somebody, that's the fix today.
Is that what you're going to do? You're going to lease it?
He's asking us to do that.
Problem is, if we do permit these commercially and lease them back to ourselves or a family member or somebody else, it's up to Paul to permit that. He's getting the direction from you.
it just seemed like we were going somewhere, and then all of a sudden we just,
Well, we are. Marcia suggested rezoning, which
I hear what,
It's going to stop everything. I just thought they could keep on and we'd rezone and everybody would be happy. Yeah, probably, yeah.
well,
Go back to the individual like we were doing before.
right.
But we're still gonna, are you gonna accept the rezoning if we rezone though after the permit, the commercial? I mean, we don't wanna go through all the process and then have you come up and say, no, we don't want it. We don't wanna,
Able to permit it a certain way, so
Yeah.
that certain way that you permit is gonna fall in line with your new,
Your current ordinance.
your current ordinance, but the one you wanna come up with, they're all gonna fall in line with it because you are rezoning that already. So you're not gonna pull a permit for a house in there, and while you guys are working on that rezoning district, if that makes sense.
well, I think the only issue is that by allowing it to move forward, we're actually, you're in violation of the current ordinance.
No, we're not if you buy.
If you buy it, yes, right,
If
right, right.
a commercial
Yes.
storage building is permissible, and I believe it's a primary use, which I haven't got anybody to say that is the primary use. Is a commercial storage unit a primary use? That's probably a Joe question.
Joe?
Primary use versus primary structure, I think.
Or primary structure, I'm sorry.
Joe?
well, commercial would be, wouldn't it?
I mean,
Oh, he didn't hear that, yeah.
a commercial storage business, yeah, it would
It's a
be, you
primary
could
structure.
establish a principal use as a storage building if it was run as a storage business, commercial storage
What the
business.
council agreed on was to allow personal storage in these buildings.
Correct.
That's
Where we were.
That's
on the
where we
third,
were.
Or on the second, and then we started the third, and then it went all to rezone.
But we're still rezoning. We're just gonna let them get their
No,
permits under.
we can't. Joe just said we can't.
We can't
Right.
what?
Allow them to do the work and then rezone afterwards.
We can rezone anytime, can't you?
Joe, is
He
that
just,
true? Is that
no,
true?
he just said no.
So Joe, will you clarify that? Joe, will you clarify that if we allow them to continue in these particular developments, and then after the fact, change the zoning to be for storage units, that we can't do that? Or can we do that?
Well, the problem is that you're allowing them, as you put it, to continue in a manner that right now violates your zoning ordinance.
Right.
And you haven't passed the amendment yet. A lot could happen between now and when that gets passed, by the time it goes through that entire process. I would never advise a city to permit or, keep development going under the notion that a zoning ordinance might come about that allows that permitting work to actually happen. I don't think anything at this point is of such dire need that it can't wait for a zoning amendment to come into play after all this time.
What
We
are
really need zoning down first.
What are the possible ramifications if we were allowed them to continue in violation of the current ordinance?
But
You just indicated on the record that you would allow landowners to violate the zoning ordinance.
But I think what they were going to do is permit under the commercial, and they would not be violating the ordinance, and then they're not going to come in and object to a PSS zone.
And that also assumes that this new zone will work properly as well. I mean, it's just not a good idea. not a good way to pursue with things in my mind, but.
If you guys agree to permit under your commercial structural building,
If they want to come in and permit pursuant to current zoning, that's fine, but if this zone falls through for some reason, then that's what they have. Commercial structures,
Well,
period.
can we just ask them to wait until you and Paul have a chance to discuss how to do this rezoning?
Well, at the end of the day, what Paul and I decide doesn't mean much. No offense to Paul, but it actually comes down to what you folks end up approving and the planning commission.
If we allow them to do that, Joe, would it jeopardize the sale of one of the properties later because they're selling it now as a personal and it's not allowed?
Well, sure. I mean, that would be a
But they're
risk on
taking they're taking the burden of the risk on, not the city, right? Because we're allowing a commercial use. They're gonna build it thinking it's gonna be for personal, and if it doesn't go through, they're stuck with a commercial use. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are stuck with commercial use
So,
with all the
That's
ramifications.
what you gotta
that come with it.
accept.
Yeah, so if it turns out we can't change the zoning, then you're stuck with having commercial buildings.
you just build commercial storage.
Right.
So we could ask you guys to move forward with this.
Okay.
And then ask Paul, tell Paul to go ahead, as long as they've got a commercial use, to permit it as they state.
Okay.
And it's up to them.
That's still gonna be in place.
Okay.
For everybody?
If a CUP is required, then that's
Yeah,
what's
well,
required.
that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, all or nothing, for everybody.
Okay.
So,
So there's gonna be a delay regardless.
So we are gonna go through with the zoning amendment.
Well,
No, they have
For-
to come before the council no matter what date, that's not a delay.
Well, right, well, if it was an over-the-counter permit, it wouldn't be a delay. If it's got a conditional use, then it's gotta come back.
Are we agreeing that we're going to go ahead, move forward with the rezoning? Yes or no?
I am in agreement to that.
Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
unless they come back with some really good
but we're
reasons
also in
why not.
agreement that right now, they are saying that they are building commercial, right?
I say, let's have somebody totally clear the air and say what we're gonna be voting on here.
Yeah,
Let's have, no, I don't know what we're voting on, that's the thing, it's
No vote.
gone all over the board, so let's have somebody rephrase what we're voting on.
Okay, I'll take a stab at it. I think what we are, I'm making a motion that those developments are, can you guys not be talking while we're trying to conduct business?
Dave?
Oh, the hammer? Excuse us. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to take a stab at this motion, that what we're
There
going.
should be no motion at a work session.
Oh,
The consensus.
okay, not a motion, but
This is a special council meeting.
Yeah, this is a special meeting, Joe.
It's a special meeting or a work session?
Special meeting.
Oh, I thought somebody told me it was a work session. Go ahead, my apologies.
okay. That we are going to allow the developments under discussion to continue with the understanding that they are building storage units for commercial use. And, hang on, with also the understanding that we are going to be adopting a change in the land use, correct, designation to allow for personal storage.
A new zone.
A new zone, yeah.
I'll second that.
If I may clarify,
So now let's have some discussion.
As a resident that is directly affected by this and directly attached to this property, I strongly object any moving forward with allowing these to be built as commercial buildings. We do not want to have any auto repair shops, paint shops of any kind in our neighborhood. That provides a lot of noise, a lot of traffic, and a lot of light pollution. It's going to change our entire neighborhood.
Because if they, right, I agree, because if we do commercial, that means any business could approach these guys and say, hey, I want to put in a tire shop, and then they can rent it out whatsoever, they could rent it out to a tire shop, and then they could go forward.
Yeah, exactly. That's
But that we were wanting to stick with personal storage going forward.
No, but Jackson, the whole point was that.
Then we can't
that
permit it
then we
for
can't
6
let them
months.
move forward.
Yeah, then we gotta just shut her down, do the rezoning.
He has it worded correctly on that.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm just, you know what I mean?
Adjourn? Or vote?
Well, we have to take.
There's a motion.
Is there any more discussion about this? Because, I mean, we're trusting that these people are going to ultimately
Right.
abide by the change in the zoning.
I mean, I personally don't think Dan and Jared would put in a commercial tire shop.
This is affecting all three developments, not just Dan and Jared.
Correct.
Actually, 4.
You have to trust,
In 60 days,
All of them.
we'll have it rezoned.
Well, if we rezone it, then they can't do that anyway.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So,
So what are you saying, Marcia? Just wait and get the rezoning done?
No, I already seconded it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm not concerned because I think that within 60 days.
I mean,
we'll
the
have
intent
it
of the
rezoned.
council here is to try to work with the builders
Correct.
and move the thing forward.
right, and this seems like the only legal way to do it,
Yeah.
without violating our ordinances.
And rest assured. if
but
we
our
don't-
attorney is not recommending it legally.
Well, I don't think he's thrilled.
I think we got,
I'd say he's very unthrilled.
Okay, so, okay, Bill.
Paul, do you have
quick.
any input? Do you have any, are you comfortable with this?
He's not comfortable. So let's just be frank, be honest about it.
I'm asking for your honest opinion.
He's trying to be polite.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah, Paul's trying to spit something out here.
I'm going to go with, I mean, from the very beginning, from the day, I mean, since the moratorium went on, the workshop, I mean, I work for you guys, I work for the people behind me, I'm here to serve the community, so ultimately I'm going to, administer what, you guys put into our ordinance. It's unusual planning practices based on what's happening in most other communities around us. So it's unique to Cross Lake. Cross Lake is not like communities around us, so I'm not trying to compare apples to apples. So I'll just say it's unique planning, what this city is allowing to put in. But as a council that represents the community, whatever you guys decide is what us as city staff will administer.
I feel like we're just trying to find a workable compromise that is not going to,
Let Bill speak here. Bill, come on up. He's wiggling around there. I'm afraid something's going to happen.
These are some of the problems we encountered in coming up with the proposal that we had presented to you and you've approved. And I still think that could be workable. The original idea was to keep everything the same, the overlay and everything, but then put CUPs on all of them that would, rather than carte blanche on, say, the 31 that are going in, because they're different. There's some that are by Golden Horizons, there's some that are by water. That would give those people the opportunity to express their opinion as far as what they need. And we could include that on the permits. But we had envisioned it where if they were limited commercial or commercial, that they could sell them or they could lease them. If they sold them, the new owner would realize he'd have to start an LLC or some sort of a business for storage. Personal storage, not commercial storage. And so Dan would have to set, I'm using Dan for an example, but for each sale, he would have to instruct them that, oh, here's the deal. You have to do this. It's the only way we could do it. We still have control over the project because of the conditional use process. Each individual lot, we can say, with the ones by Golden Horizon, more trees, and that's within the bounds of what we do.
I think we're putting conditional use
Didn't
on
we
each
say,
one of
yeah,
them.
didn't we say we were
Right.
going to do it on each one? Yeah,
What
Yeah.
he explained is just perfect.
yeah. But that's what I thought we did. I thought
Yes,
that's what we were saying.
yep.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm just giving some reasons why the conditional use permits were so important on all three of them. Because even though there's 31 lots that are the same, they're not really the same. Some are gonna require different conditions than others. The same with, the Pet Lodge property back there. I would say that would be the least stringent
Right.
of all because of the toy box and all the surrounding, storage buildings there. I mean, they're not, there's no overhangs on them. They're not particularly nice looking. On the main thoroughfare, they would be downright ugly, but back where they are, so Jeff's could be uglier, you
Right.
know? It, we're gonna put you in the rest of the building.
I mean, it's for laughing now, right?
Yeah, well, let's get right down to it, it's the truth.
Okay,
Right.
no, we got the conditional use on them, so you're gonna be able to do each one of them individually.
Right, and then they will take, and a condition of sale is that they have to come and, I don't know who's gonna get the conditional use permit, but along with the conditional use permit would be that agreement for storage. And then they can start tomorrow.
Well,
And just
I
keep it,
thought-
just keep it like that.
I mean, so requiring them to have an LLC to own the building.
Yeah,
How's this going to affect you?
I mean, it's an LLC, I don't know what it costs to get one going, but not very much. And each one would still be an individual property. It would absolve them of some liability, being an LLC, with regard to doing personal storage. It would also allow them to store their own stuff. It just seems like it's a win-win for everybody. Just my opinion.
So you're saying, Bill, proceed, have them, designate them as commercial, then we don't have to change the zoning.
Right.
Yeah.
Or commercial or light industrial or whatever they are. That was the original concept that we tried to put together.
Why did they agree to do that all along?
Well,
They've been trying to say.
that's what
Trying to say.
I've been,
Exactly what you just said.
I've had discussions with all three of them on this proposal, and that's, I
Well, I
don't
never
know.
heard that proposal.
Right, so even if someone wants it's personal, or even if someone wants to do personal storage and commercial, they have to come up with a LLC, and then they can do their personal
this was-
storage in a commercial.
That was the mechanism
Okay.
to try to get it to work, is, you know, what we're doing is I discovered a loophole, or they discovered a loophole.
Tell me the rules.
Say that, right?
Well, it
Careful,
was.
don't say that.
It was a loophole
accurate.
in the deal, and it's a way to accomplish what everyone's trying to accomplish. And
Well, I like that better than
done
rezoning
with
it.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees on that now. Marcia? High five.
I was gonna come up at first, but I wasn't sure what this meeting was gonna be. There was no real
So
agenda.
what are we gonna do, vote on your motion and let it?
Let it die. Well, let it die.
I'm done.
Vote on it to kill it.
Yeah, but you have to vote.
I say vote on it to kill it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Well, I mean, no. I thought you were, I thought.
Opposed.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that dies.
Okay, keep in mind, we're now turning 50 CUPs loose on staff. Am I pretty close?
Yep.
You're right.
We should have the office open on Saturdays anyway.
Joe wants to say something.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, just to make a correction here, the use is the use. It doesn't matter if somebody creates an LLC or doesn't create an LLC. At the end of the day, if it's zoned for commercial storage, it has to be commercial storage. Period. Creating an LLC does not protect anybody from the use. The use still has to be commercial in nature.
Okay.
You could be a sole proprietor and have a commercial business, and not have an LLC.
Well, on paper, will it look like commercial?
Well, why don't we go back to vote again on that?
God.
Let's go back and vote again and not deep six it.
Well, you could still do commercial storage and just say you're running an LLC and you have a commercial business and that's where your storage is
Well,
gonna be.
Now you're asking people to lie.
Well, that's a,
Rezone it.
right. It could still technically be zoned commercial and doing commercial storage in a commercial zone if you do an LLC and just rent it back to yourself or rent it to somebody else.
I
Then they can
think,
build.
I think the attorney just got finished telling us no, that it had to be the use, not, the LLC was not going to do it for us.
As far as overwhelming the staff, for instance, the 31 that Dan and Jared have, there's the vast majority of them are all similar. The CUPs for those would be identical. There's a couple of them that are different because of their locations. New Horizon, you know, the ones around there. The ones at the back where there are homes. And I think that's it. But, you know, you could just rubber stamp them. Am I speaking out of turn, or is that?
Well, we wanted to have CUPs if they were for personal storage too. So, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know
that would
that it
be,
makes.
staff could run it through
Right,
though.
mhm.
That, they would all go through Paul and it'd be similar, so it wouldn't really take a whole lot of time. It's, in my opinion. That's all.
Paul, you want to say something? I feel like either way, our attorney is not happy with us because either we rezone after allowing them to go forward with them understanding that even though right now it's in a light commercial, that they're going to, after we rezone it, then they're going to be for personal storage. Joe doesn't like that, but Joe doesn't also like the fact if we leave the commercial and with the understanding they're going to be doing LLCs, not happy with that either, so.
I think, my personal opinion is we should rezone it, let them permit with the commercial, the way we allowed it previously, and move on with rezoning those additions.
Rezoning what additions?
To personal. To personal storage. PSS.
What you exactly said, the original motion that
Yeah.
you did in 2 seconds.
We should vote again instead.
Well, either way, whether we rent, like Zale is saying, and lease the buildings out that are commercial, or whether you rezone, is acceptable both ways to us.
Right.
We can still go get his permit tomorrow.
Right.
So we'll do that in the meantime. If you guys want to zone to a commercial, that would be great.
Okay. That's what I said, but.
There you go.
Okay. Are you first and I'm seconding?
Okay.
And then we'll vote again?
Is this the same
So
motion that we
we're
did?
taking
Say?
no legal advice.
What?
Is that what we're just going to take no legal advice?
Well, what's our other option, Char?
You're in a unique situation.
Yeah, I mean,
We're just going to move forward.
I mean, we're not breaking any laws.
We're not gonna drag Huskow.
Yeah, I mean, we're,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion.
oh,
It's the same, did you write down our motion before?
I want a new motion.
okay. I'm moving that we allow the developments under question to proceed as commercial storage in a light commercial zone with the understanding that down the line, we will be changing the zoning to private, personal storage. That's it, PSS. Okay,
Second.
May I make a change there quick?
sorry?
Can I suggest a quick change instead of saying we will be changing, instead of just say we will be pursuing a change? I don't want the
Okay.
council to
Okay,
state here on the record that you're absolutely going to do something that you haven't even seen
Okay.
yet.
all right.
And just Or you also use of limited commercial, could you just say, because Dean is in, Vaughn Lake Park is in commercial light industrial. You're leaving him out of this.
Okay. Do I have to do it all over again? Okay. I move that we allow the developers under question to continue with their developments in a light industrial or commercial zone,
Limited commercial zone, with the understanding that the council will pursue the notion of rezoning for personal storage.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Woo!
Jackson, make your motion.
Hey, wait a second, are you guys gonna do anything with the word more?
I was just going to say, are we going to lift the moratorium?
No, that was not on the agenda for today.
Okay, so no,
Well,
we're not.
thank you for showing up and at least trying to help us.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is
Thanks,
that
Joe.
the moratorium does not, listen, the moratorium, per Paul said that it didn't include ones that were legal, not legal, but you're accepting,
Yeah,
right?
we still have two things. We still have what the decisions the city is doing moving forward, and then we have what we just made a motion for,
Right.
for these four individual developers. So moving forward, and we can still have discussions, but moving forward, we're still, as our ordinance states, we still are no personal storage,
Yes.
accessory structures,
Right.
need a
Yes.
principal structure, just
I
to be
I
clear.
think we need to have more discussion about that particularly.
And we can, but
Okay.
for today,
That's it.
those are the
Okay,
two, so we just got to separate those.
okay. All right.
Thank you, Paul.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.